human rights related issues. One very simple question to answer is Jocelyn's, are we creating an environment where human rights are being violated? And the answer is very simply, absolutely no. Mark listed on the 2 slides that went into detail, which demonstrate, I think we are fulfilling the commitment we made in the approach paper to be socially inclusive. And by doing that, and by identifying and putting in systems to protect all of the groups that have been identified in this set of safeguards that were absolutely absent in the prior set of safeguards, we have created a socially inclusive agenda that provides human rights protection for all of these groups that were prior to that point invisible in the system. So the answer is very clearly no. When it comes to so-called peppering of international law in the current framework, what we've done is broaden the coverage of international law. Previously, the only references to international law were international environmental law. And we had a discussion about whether we should refer to ILO Convention 169, as Carla referred to it. And the answer was something that I learned when I worked for the UN Environment Program in 1989. There are literally hundreds of environmental treaties. There are hundreds of other treaties in the world. All of them are relevant to development. And maybe a lot of those will need to be identified in guidance documents to help us do the projects the right way. But the idea is to be sure that we capture those issues through the good environmental and social impact assessment. And I think what you can see is that most of the other multilateral development banks indeed do pepper some of these treaties, but they're never completely comprehensive into to the full range of international agreements that exist. So indeed, we made a conscious effort to be sure that we capture the principles, but not put in place a series of conventions which, we all hope that once these standards are adopted, they will stand the test of time. And conventions change over time. There's decisions that change over time, and then our board and our system would react to a series of decisions outside the scope of the bank's mandate. So I think the rationale was very clear for why we took this particular approach.
Maybe, I know there are lots of people waiting to ask questions and many more comments, so let me just be extremely brief. So we hear you very much on the process. As you know, this is work in progress. We are posting drafts as we develop them. We don't sit on them for weeks and months. We produce them and then put them out for discussions. We very much hear your inputs and value them very much. As Mark explained before, and as we mentioned, what we have put forward is the framework. Under that will be directives, there'll be procedures, and there'll be toolkits and guidance. Many of the inputs we've received pertain to values and principles, which I think we've reflected. In work that you'll be seeing over the few months, in the next few months, we'll be drilling more into the process, and many of the submissions we've also received focus very much on the process part of this. And I think we'll make ample use of all the material that you've submitted, and we'll be very happy to put drafts out in the future as we develop them, and give ample discussion and ample room for discussion, because we want to hear from everybody, and we'll take the time it takes to hear from all of you. So thanks.
Just to add to what Stefan said, I don't really care what we call this meeting. I think what's important about this meeting is that it's valuable from our perspective because we're hearing from you. We're hearing the concerns that you're raising here. It's like a plenary session in many respects. A lot of us have met all week talking about different issues. So this is an opportunity for us all to come together with colleagues that are listening on the web and have this broad-ranging discussion. So that's what I take from it. It's a valuable conversation that we're having. In terms of the consultation process, we hear what you're saying about meetings such as Tbilisi, and we need to learn from that. We certainly will have a conversation about that later on today. It's important to remember that these meetings in country are also meetings for government agencies, for borrowers to also participate in. So we're trying to reach out to those as much as to the CSO community. Now, in a manner and time frame acceptable to the bank. Every project that we do is different. We have projects in many countries at different stages of development. Some of them are comparatively rich in terms of their resources, financial, technical. Some of them are very poor and need a lot of help. Some of them need a little more time to meet our requirements than others. And we have to be mindful of that. We have to be client-focused. So when we say in a time frame and manner acceptable to the bank, what we mean is, yes, we need to be mindful. That doesn't mean we give endless latitude to borrowers to do what they want when they want. It means we have to take a responsible approach, and where they're asking for some latitude and need some latitude, we should be prepared to consider that. But when I say consider it, what I mean is that needs to be done in an open, transparent manner. That will be disclosed in project documents, and you will have the opportunity to comment on things such as in a manner and time frame consistent to the bank. When we propose something, you will all know about that, and you will have the opportunity to comment on that and question us and say, well, actually, we think something could be done in a much quicker time frame, and we can have a debate on that around specific projects. But to try and generalize in a set of 10 standards, scenarios that cover every possible project in every sector around the world is a very tall order. And that is what has caused us many problems in the past, because the past documents, the OPs, have often been very generic, and it's been very difficult to determine if someone is complying or not and what is actually meant by a certain sentence. So we're trying to be very clear in these drafts. Time frame and manner consistent or acceptable to the bank also means that we have to exercise our own professional judgment within the bank and be held accountable to that. When the president talks of taking smart risk, this is what it's about. It's us taking a decision based on a discussion with a borrower about how and when they will do something, listening to the views from stakeholders, and then being held accountable for that. That's what it's about. My colleague from Ethiopia mentioned issues there around stakeholder engagement and the political fabric of some countries. Now, I don't want to get into politics, but what I do want to say is that it's very important to us, and it's covered in ESS 1 and ESS 10 in particular. It's very important to us that we have meaningful consultation on projects, that we disclose information to people, and we discuss with stakeholders. So that means actually listening to stakeholders on the ground and making sure that we can have conversations with stakeholders in a safe way, so that they're not discriminated or persecuted for discussing things with the bank. So this is why we have this project-focused approach. So whatever is happening in the rest of the country, in our project, it's important for us to have meaningful and valuable discussion with people.
Okay, with everyone's permission, can we move in? Should we move into the whole set around non-discrimination, vulnerable groups, human rights, and have a set of questions on that, if that's okay with everybody? Can we bring a mic to Mohammed?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the panelists, and also thank you for my colleagues from civil society for their valuable comments. It's very hard for me to speak today with the tone of criticism, just because we know that there is an advancement on the level of integrating disability into the safeguards. My name is Mohammed Lutfi. I represent the Lebanese Physical Handicap Union and the Disabled People International Arab Regional Office. And I would like to focus on this, but on the aspect of disability, since we're talking about non-discrimination standards within the safeguards. But I would like to tweak my points to be more helpful and practical as well concerning what we need to discuss today. My experience as a former staff member at the bank as well, that World Bank staff members are very concerned about time. They are pressured by trust funds and by the government, by the administration, that they need to finish projects on time. Governments also put lots of pressure on the implementers of projects that they need to finish things on time. Yes, we understand that time frame and manner standards are very important to keep people in check. The problem is that this is really diluting the quality anticipated from projects run by the World Bank. For instance, this is influencing disabled persons, because if we want to just, focus on finishing projects on time without taking into account the quality of the results of these projects, this might really harm persons, vulnerable groups, disabled persons, etc. Just because there is a lack of quality checklist of projects. We don't see that reflected through the safeguard language that we have now between our hands. So my recommendation or my suggestion is that maybe we can improve this statement of manners and time frame acceptable by the bank, just to make sure that the bank has a commitment toward improving the quality of projects that would definitely improve opportunities of inclusion and accessibility of projects. So this is one point. The second point is about there is different places or spots in the safeguards that says it as appropriate, and this is particularly mentioned when the bank gives the chance to governments or borrowing countries to decide on pursuing different standards, or just something that would be more compatible with their legal standards, national legal standards. This is important. This is very understandable that the bank wants to respect government's sovereignty, national sovereignty, and the context, the cultural context. This is very important. I'm all for that. I'm an anthropologist, and I really like that. However, there is no clear identification for how this is going to happen. Who is going to decide on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate? Who is going to be responsible for monitoring that, yes, national legal frameworks pertaining to issues that we want to see in the safeguards would not by itself cause harm for vulnerable groups, won't be exclusive in the sense that persons with disabilities, for instance, would be out of this process. The quality of projects, if we want to give a chance to governments to do this, would not be. The issues of inclusion, for instance, would not be taken into account. So we need to see this clear. The problem is sometimes the bank, I know, because you want to be flexible, you write your documents in somehow vague language. We need to, you can keep your documents, but we need guidance. We need to see more binding guidance attached to these documents, annexed to these documents. And the last point, how is this going to be financed? Financing is not clear. The financing mechanism, the financing policy, the budgeting policy of the implementation of the safeguard is not clear. And how are we going to keep this consistency of language we want to see about inclusion and the respect of human rights and the accountability of governments and the World Bank and whoever third party involved with this? How are we going to see that also reflected through the financing process of the implementation and the monitoring and the evaluation of the safeguards? These are my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you.